Imagine living 15 years of marriage, raising 2 boys, believing you know everything about your family, until a simple medical test shatters your world. The kids aren't yours. How is that even possible? But that's just the beginning. Secrets, lies, and betrayals that turn everything upside down. I'm about to take you through the darkest moments of my life, when trust was broken and nothing was what it seemed. This is the story of deception, heartbreak, and the desperate search for truth. Brace yourself, because once you hear this, you'll question everything you thought you knew. So, I was living the life, married to the woman I thought I knew for 15 years. 2 kids, 2 great kids, mind you, and just generally living the American dream. We had a big house, vacations to Disneyland every summer, and I honestly thought everything was fine. Until one day, everything came crashing down because of a damn kidney. It all started because my brother Tim was diagnosed with some major kidney issues. He needed a transplant. Now, Tim and I weren't exactly close. He's a few years older than me, and we didn't grow up best buds, but family's family. So when he reached out saying he needed a kidney, I didn't hesitate. I figured I'd get tested, see if I was a match. What I didn't expect was for my whole world to be turned upside down during the process. You see, I didn't think about it much at the time, but Tim, being the smart guy he is, suggested I have the kids tested too. Why? Well, apparently, there's a chance the donor's kid could be a match for a family member. But that wasn't the bombshell. No, that came when the results came back, and both my sons weren't a match for me. I'm not gonna lie, at first, I thought it was some kind of mistake. I asked, no, demanded a retest. But sure enough, after double-checking, it was confirmed. My kids, the ones I thought I raised, weren't biologically mine. Cue the nuclear meltdown in my brain. Now, let me tell you something. I've never been a guy to fly off the handle. Sure, I'm stubborn and I hate being wrong, but I don't get all emotional. But that's like walking into a house full of ghosts. My heart raced, my palms sweated, and I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. No warning signs, no nothing. Just bam! I've been living a lie. For a few days, I couldn't talk to anyone. I didn't want to tell Tim just yet. He had enough on his plate. And this was not something I wanted to drop on him while he was struggling to stay alive. But I wasn't stupid. I knew that the moment I saw those results, something didn't add up. What do you do when you find out you've been lied to in the most profound way possible? Well, first, I didn't even trust my wife Sarah to explain it. I needed to do some digging first. It's not like I didn't trust her, but there was no other option. I needed answers. So I started with the basics. I dug through old pictures, checked the hospital records for my son's births, and eventually I had one of those "why didn't I see this coming" moments. Here's the thing though, Sarah wasn't a bad person. I knew that deep down. But she had her secrets, and one of those secrets was a night that I never saw coming. But what was I supposed to do next? How do you confront your wife with something like this? All right, so there I was, sitting in my office late one night, staring at the results from the DNA test like they were some sort of twisted riddle. My 2 sons weren't mine, and the more I thought about it, the more I felt like an idiot. I'd raised them, loved them, done everything for them. But now, this new reality felt like someone had swapped my entire life with someone else's. I needed answers. I needed to know how this all happened. So I dove into the old files, Our old emails, tax documents, records from when we first bought our house, anything that could give me a clue. It took hours, but then I found it. The file I never should have opened. It was a report from a work conference Sarah had attended several years ago. I remember the time well. We were going through one of the toughest periods of our lives, barely scraping by. The business was losing money, I wasn't bringing in enough, and Sarah, well, she was burning the candle at both ends. She was working overtime just to make ends meet, constantly stressed out and drained. But the thing that stuck out in my memory, and what I'd conveniently pushed aside at the time, was the promotion. Sarah had been working long hours at her job, and she had a boss. Let's call him Jerry. Jerry was a classic tightwad, a real penny pincher. He never showed much interest in the employees beyond their ability to get results, and that was it. I hated the guy from the start. There was something about him, always looking down on people, especially the ones who weren't as important as he was. But here's the thing. Sarah kept coming home with these extra tired eyes, like she'd been carrying the weight of the world. Still, I had no reason to doubt her. She always told me, "It's just the stress of work. Jerry's a hard ass, but I'll get through it. It's just another promotion on the horizon." She kept saying that, promotion after promotion, and sure enough, she moved up fast. I'd congratulate her, but there was a voice in my head that was always whispering, "How the hell is she getting all these promotions? She's good, but is she that good?" She was. She had that go-getter mentality. But what I couldn't put together, not at the time anyway, was the other pieces. The way Jerry started showing up at odd hours, taking her out for work dinners, and, yeah, the way her phone would buzz at odd times when I wasn't around. I'd catch her texting him late at night about deals and strategies. I'd ask, "Who's that?" And she'd wave me off with a smile and say, "Just work stuff, honey. Relax." But the promotions just kept coming, like clockwork. And with each one, I got more and more unsettled. It wasn't until later that I started to feel it, when she'd come home and tell me how Jerry's such a great guy. He really understands my ambition. It wasn't much, but it was enough for me to wonder. Then, there was the one day, late in the evening after one of these so-called strategy dinners, when I caught them. Not in some compromising position, but in an innocent enough way. Her office door was slightly ajar, and I saw Jerry's car parked in front of our house, waiting for her to finish up her work at 10:30 p.m. You can call me paranoid, but in that moment, something felt off. She told me she'd been working late, and I had to trust her. I wanted to, but my gut was screaming that something wasn't right. And then I found the file. It was buried in our old work documents, and as soon as I opened it, I felt like I'd been sucker punched. There, in black and white, was an old email chain between Sarah and Jerry. Nothing explicit, but it was clear. There was more than just business talk going on. So, I decided to get creative. I sent an anonymous tip to the company where Jerry worked. I made sure it was framed just right, something that made it look like an official inquiry. I wanted him to believe that his new employer had some interest in his past. It was a stretch, but if it worked, he'd feel cornered, and he wouldn't have any choice but to meet me. I waited a day, and then, sure enough, Jerry called. His voice was smooth, professional, as always. He didn't know it yet, but this was the moment where everything started to unravel for him. "Hello, Mr. Henderson," Jerry said. "I received your inquiry about my employment history. Is there a problem?" I leaned back in my chair, watching the phone ring, and then clicked the call button. "No problem at all," I said, keeping my tone casual. "I just wanted to clear up some things. You've been pretty quiet these last few years, haven't you? A man like you with such a history in the industry, I thought you'd be more visible." I prefer a low profile, Jerry replied. Keeps things clean. Of course, I said, the fake politeness in my voice dripping like venom. But I've got a few questions, Jerry, and I think it's time you answered them. There's something about your past that you've been hiding, something you've kept under wraps, and I need to know if it has anything to do with my family. The silence on the other end of the line was thick. I could feel his mind scrambling. He didn't know what I knew, but I had a feeling that the moment I said family, it would all start to sink in. You're talking about Sarah, aren't you? He finally said, his voice tight. Well, Jerry, I said, leaning in closer to the phone, I think it's time we had a little chat. You're going to meet me, and this time we'll talk face to face. I'm not asking, I'm telling you. He hesitated. I could almost hear his jaw clenching on the other end, but I wasn't done yet. And you'll bring proof, I said. I want a DNA test. You've been involved with my wife for years. I'm not asking for much, just a little sample of your DNA, something to compare with mine and my kids. He let out a long breath. You don't want to do this. It's not what you think. Too late for that, Jerry. You're going to take the test, and you're going to tell me the truth about what happened with Sarah. We'll see who's the father. If you refuse, I'll make sure your company finds out what you've been hiding. And that was it. No more games. I had him now, and there was no way he was getting out of this one. The next few days felt like an eternity. Every hour seemed to stretch longer as I waited for Jerry to answer. I kept replaying that phone call in my mind, the way he'd hesitated, the slight tremor in his voice when I mentioned the DNA test. He was cornered, but he didn't have the nerve to face me directly yet. I knew it was coming, though. He was too smart not to give in eventually, and when he did, I was going to get the truth, one way or another. Then it happened. My phone rang, and the caller ID showed an unknown number. No surprise there. Jerry didn't want to show his hand just yet. I answered, my voice calm and steady, but my insides were a knot of nerves. Mr. Henderson, Jerry said. His tone clipped, like he was trying to keep things professional. I'll meet you, but only on my terms. I froze. What? I didn't, Jerry repeated, more forcefully this time. Your kids, they're not mine. I never fathered them. It was just the affair. But the kids? No, they're not mine. For a moment, everything stopped. The weight of his words hit me harder than anything I'd heard so far. I had assumed, of course, that my kids were his. That was the whole point of this damn test, wasn't it? What the hell are you talking about? I spat. You just confessed to sleeping with my wife for years, and now you're telling me you're not the father? Jerry sat back in his chair, looking almost relieved. I'm telling you the truth, Henderson. The kids aren't mine. I swear it. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. Everything I thought I knew was a lie. I grabbed the test kits, opened one, and handed him the swab. Then who the hell is the father, Jerry? What the hell happened with Sarah? If it wasn't you, then who? Why the hell did she keep this from me? Jerry shook his head slowly, his eyes avoiding mine. I don't know. I swear to God, but it wasn't me. I moved forward, trying to process the whirlwind of emotions that had just hit me. This is impossible, I muttered. You were her boss. It makes sense. How could you? How could I not have seen this coming? Jerry didn't respond. He just took the swab, did what he was supposed to do, and handed it back to me. The test results came back a few days later. I stared at the document like I was holding a grenade. The truth I was expecting to shatter my life had already been ripped apart. But now, with this, the real truth was about to slap me in the face again. Jerry wasn't the father. And Sarah, my wife, she'd lied to me from the very beginning. The room spun as I stared at the DNA test results. My hands were shaking so badly, I had to grip the edge of the table to steady myself. The words on the paper were crystal clear. Jerry is not the father. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't some lab error. It was the cold, hard truth. I don't know what I expected. In some corner of my mind, I thought maybe it was a mix-up. Maybe I'd get a different result and everything would make sense again. But there it was, plain as day. The betrayal wasn't just about Jerry. Hell, it wasn't just about Sarah either. It was about the fact that my entire life had been a lie. I stood up from the chair, pacing back and forth across the room. My mind was reeling. I couldn't focus. Who, I kept asking myself, who the hell fathered my children? Was it Jerry's friend? Another one of Sarah's colleagues? Did she have a thing with the damn mailman? The milkman? The guy who pumped gas into our car when I was too busy to do it myself? I laughed bitterly at the absurdity of it. It was almost a joke, but it wasn't funny. Nothing about this was funny. I had been deceived beyond belief. For years, I'd raised 2 kids I thought were mine, 2 sons I loved like nothing else. And now, with a few simple words, everything had changed. Everything I thought was real had been ripped from under me like a rug being yanked out from under a sleeper. The kids weren't mine. And Sarah, my wife, she had played me for a fool the entire time. I sat down heavily on the couch, my head in my hands. The weight of the situation was suffocating. I kept replaying all the little things, the late nights, the weird looks, the subtle way she'd avoid questions about her work. How she'd suddenly become so obsessed with promotions and keeping things professional, when, in reality, I should have known something wasn't right. How I should have known I was just a cover, a convenient husband who played the part, while she carried on her little secret life behind my back. But I wasn't just angry at Sarah anymore. I was angry at myself. How could I have been so blind? I kept asking myself. How could I not have seen this coming? I stood up and began pacing again, my frustration turning to rage. I could feel the heat rising in my chest. My blood was boiling. My brain couldn't even process it all. It wasn't just that she'd cheated. Hell, everyone had warned me. The subtle comments from my coworkers about how lucky I was to have a wife so successful. The whispers from old friends who had seen Sarah and Jerry together more times than I'd care to count. I had ignored every single sign. But now, everything clicked. All those little pieces of the puzzle I refused to put together. The suspicious work dinners. The late nights she'd come home smelling like perfume I didn't recognize. The times I'd noticed the glow in her eyes when she'd talk about how well Jerry treats her and how he just understands her ambition. That wasn't just admiration. It was something else. It was the same look she had when she talked about the kids. The same look she had when she talked about me. But the real question now was, who was it? Was it the guy who worked at the gas station down the street? The one who always smiled at her a little too long when she paid for the fuel? Was it the guy from the supermarket who bagged our groceries? Or the handyman who came around to fix the leaks in the roof last summer. I realized with a sickening clarity that I would never know the truth. She'd taken that from me, too. I thought back to the years we'd spent together, raising the boys, taking them to soccer practice, coaching them on how to be good men. I had watched them grow, celebrated their milestones, been proud of every single thing they did. And now I had to face the fact that they weren't mine. They weren't my flesh and blood. But they were my sons in every other way. I loved them. I didn't know how I would explain this to them. How do you tell your kids that the man who raised them wasn't their father? How do you break their world the way mine had been shattered? I sank down on the couch again, my head spinning with 1,000 thoughts. Sarah had taken everything from me. The truth, my trust, the love I had given her. And now she was gone. She didn't even know I had the DNA results yet. I couldn't wait to confront her. I couldn't wait to see the look on her face when she realized I knew. But there was still one more thing I had to figure out. Who had she been with? And how had I been so blind? Because at the end of the day, I had raised these kids. I had taught them how to ride a bike, helped them with their homework, watched them grow into young men. And now I was stuck wondering who the hell their real father was. I couldn't sleep. My mind raced with 1,000 questions, each one more painful than the last. I kept coming back to the same thought. Who else knows? If Sarah had been this good at hiding her affair from me, who else was in on it? Who else had known the truth while I'd been in the dark? Then it hit me. Her sister. I'd known her sister, Laura, for years. We were close, closer than I ever was with my own siblings. She was always there when Sarah needed her, just as I was. They shared everything, the secrets, the memories, the details of their lives that no one else knew. If anyone knew the full extent of Sarah's betrayal, it was Laura. Laura wasn't just some passive observer, though. She was sharp, too sharp. And as much as I hated the idea of dragging her into this, I knew I had no choice. I had to get the answers. If Sarah wasn't going to be honest with me, maybe her sister would be. I didn't waste any time. I picked up my phone and made the call. Laura answered on the second ring. "Hey, it's me," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "We need to talk." There was a pause before she replied, her tone cautious. "What about?" "I know what's been going on," I said, my words coming out more harshly than I intended. "I know about Sarah. I know she's been lying to me. I know she's been sleeping with Jerry. But I need to know more. I need to understand why she's been doing this, and if you know anything about it, now's the time to tell me." There was another long pause on the line. I could hear her breathing, steady but nervous. I was pushing her into a corner, and I knew it. But I needed answers. I needed the truth. "You don't understand," Laura finally said. "You don't know everything about Sarah. You don't know what she's been dealing with. You have no idea what's been going on in her mind." My stomach twisted. What was she talking about? What the hell are you talking about, Laura? I've been living in the dark for years, thinking everything was fine, thinking I had a family. And now I was stuck wondering who the hell their real father was. She sighed heavily, her voice softening. "Look, it's not as simple as you think. Sarah's been struggling for a long time. She hasn't been herself. And I didn't want to tell you this, but I think you need to hear it." "What are you talking about?" I asked, my frustration bubbling up again. "Sarah, she has bipolar disorder," Laura said quietly. "I didn't want to tell you. She didn't want anyone to know. But it's the truth. She's been dealing with it for years. It's been really hard on her, on all of us. I don't know how much you knew about her mood swings, but they've been getting worse. I was stunned. Bipolar disorder? I hadn't seen it coming. Of course, I knew Sarah could be a little unpredictable at times, but I had chalked it up to stress, or maybe just her natural temperament. I never imagined it was something as serious as this. "How long has this been going on?" I asked, my voice shaking slightly. "For years," Laura replied. "It started after the kids were born. At first, it was manageable, but as time went on, the swings got more extreme. She'd be fine one minute and then completely lose it the next. It's been affecting everything, her work, her relationships, and, yeah, her affair with Jerry." I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. "You mean to tell me all of this, the cheating, the lies, everything, was because of her mental health?" I asked, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. Laura was silent for a moment before speaking again. "It's not that simple. Sarah didn't want to admit she had a problem. She didn't want anyone to know she was struggling, so she kept it all inside. But when she started getting more manic, she did things, made choices that she wouldn't have made otherwise. The affair, it wasn't just about Jerry. It was about her feeling out of control, like she had no control over her own life. And Jerry, well, he preyed on that." I couldn't process what I was hearing. I wanted to scream. I wanted to punch a hole in the wall. But I just stood there, frozen, as the weight of it all hit me. "Is that why she kept everything hidden?" I asked, barely able to form the words. "Because of her illness?" "Partly," Laura said. "But there's more to it. Sarah's been pushing people away for a long time. She didn't want to admit she needed help. She was ashamed of it. And that's when she started having the affair, because she thought no one would love her for who she really was. She thought that if she could control something, anything, then maybe she could find some balance." I felt like I'd been slapped across the face. It wasn't just the affair that had destroyed me. It was everything. All the years of believing that everything was fine, that I had a family. But now it seemed like it was all a lie, wrapped up in mental illness, poor choices, and a whole lot of secrets. "Do you think she really loves me?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I wasn't even sure if I wanted to know the answer. Laura paused before answering, her voice tinged with sadness. "I think she loves you in her own way, but I also think she's been running from herself for a long time. And maybe she didn't know how to love you the way you deserved. She thought she had to be someone else to keep you around." My heart sank. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I had spent my life with, wasn't the person I thought she was. I didn't know who she was anymore. "I need to talk to her," I said finally. "I need to know if this was all just because of her illness. If it was, I might be able to forgive her. But if it wasn't, if she just chose this, then you need to ask her," Laura replied. "But be prepared. Sarah's not in a good place right now, and I don't think she can handle much more." I sat in the car for 20 minutes before I worked up the nerve to go inside. Our home, my home, looked the same from the outside. Same porch light flickering like always, Same pair of kids' bikes lying haphazardly on the lawn. But the inside, I already knew it would feel different. Like stepping into a house where you once lived, but don't belong anymore. She was in the kitchen when I walked in, making tea like it was any other day. The kettle whistled behind her while she stirred honey into a mug. No makeup, baggy sweatshirt, hair tied back in a lazy knot. She didn't look like the woman who'd wrecked my world. She looked like my wife. And that was the problem. She turned when she heard me and froze mid-motion. Her eyes locked on mine, and for a moment, it was like we were two strangers standing in the middle of a place we used to call home. "I got your message," she said, softly, voice like wet paper. "That you wanted to talk." I nodded and stepped forward. "Yeah, we need to. No more dodging. No more lying. I want the truth, Sarah. I need the truth." She swallowed hard, her hands trembling just enough to make the spoon clink against the ceramic mug. She didn't say anything, so I did what I came to do. I asked her the question that had been burning a hole in my chest for weeks. "Do you love me, Sarah?" Her eyes met mine, tired, glassy, red-rimmed. "What?" "It's not complicated. Do you love me? Or was I just convenient? A paycheck, a house, stability? Was it just easier to stay married than be honest?" She stared at me, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of something. Regret, maybe? Or maybe just fear. "I don't know," she whispered. "You don't know?" I said, louder than I meant to. 15 years, Sarah. We built a life, a family. And now you're standing there saying you don't know if you ever loved me? "I'm not saying I never did," she said quickly. "I did, I think. I wanted to. But somewhere along the line..." She trailed off, eyes darting around the kitchen like she was looking for the pieces of herself she'd lost. I stepped closer. "Then tell me this. The kids. Whose are they?" She looked down at the floor, like the answer might be scrawled in the tile grout. "I don't know," she whispered again. "What do you mean, you don't know?" I asked, my voice shaken now too. "How can you not know who fathered our children?" "Because that part of my life is a blur," she said, her voice cracking. "I wasn't okay back then. You think I don't remember? That I don't wake up some nights wondering how I got here? Who I am? I remember pieces, flashes, feelings, but not facts." I stared at her. "So you cheated on me more than once, and you don't even know who with?" "I'm telling you the truth," she said. I've been lost for years. It's like there's this fog in my head, and I can't tell what's real anymore. I've been trying to keep it together, for you, for the boys, for myself. But..." She stopped, choked on her words, then finally let them out in a ragged breath. "Some days I wake up and don't even remember what year it is." I leaned against the wall, trying to hold myself upright. This wasn't the confession I expected. I thought I'd get lies, maybe even more names. But this was worse. It was chaos, a bottomless pit of confusion where answers should have been. "You don't remember?" I repeated, numb. She shook her head, blinking fast as tears welled up. I was unmedicated. I didn't even know I had a problem. I thought I was just stressed. You were always working. I was home with the kids, losing pieces of myself and trying to hide it. And then, things happened. Things I don't even remember choosing. "And you never told me?" I said, my voice low, flat. "I was ashamed," she whispered. "I didn't know how to explain any of it. And I thought, if I could just pretend hard enough, maybe I could make it real." I looked at her and saw not the woman I married, but a stranger wearing her face. A woman unraveling quietly while I stood 5 feet away, blind to the threads pulling loose. "What do I tell the boys?" I asked, the words falling like bricks from my mouth. She didn't answer. She just turned back to the tea, gripping the mug like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. I walked out of the kitchen without another word. The word divorce felt like a punch to the gut every time it crossed my mind. It wasn't just a legal separation. It was the death of everything I thought we had. The end of my family, my life as I knew it. But here's the thing. I couldn't accept it. Not yet. Despite the lies, the betrayal, the shattered trust, I still had 2 boys who needed me. 2 lives that I had helped shape, whether I was their biological father or not. And that made all the difference. I remember sitting at my desk one night, the house silent except for the hum of the air conditioner. I pulled out my phone and started searching for specialists, doctors who understood bipolar disorder, who had a reputation for patience and success. I needed someone who could help Sarah, someone who could give her a chance to find herself again. Because no matter what had happened, she was still my wife, still the mother of my children. It wasn't easy. I called clinic after clinic, listening to receptionists and making appointments. I was meticulous, not willing to settle for anything less than the best. I wanted to do right by Sarah, even if she couldn't do the same for me. When I finally found Dr. Marcus Ellison, a psychiatrist with glowing reviews and a calm demeanor, I felt a flicker of hope. I scheduled an appointment for Sarah, knowing that the road ahead would be tough but necessary. At the same time, I started consulting with a divorce attorney, not because I wanted to rush into it, but because I had to be prepared. My lawyer was straightforward, telling me about custody options, financial arrangements, and the messy reality of unraveling a life that had once seemed so solid. But for now, the thought of breaking up my boys tore me apart. So I made a promise to take care of them, to be their father no matter what, and to be the steady hand they needed. The next weeks were a whirlwind. Sarah started therapy, and I saw glimpses of the woman I'd fallen in love with, fragile but fighting. Some days were harder than others, but I kept reminding myself that recovery isn't linear. I balanced work, the boys' schedules, doctor visits, and my own swirling emotions. There were moments I felt overwhelmed, moments I wanted to give up. But then I saw my sons laughing, playing, being kids, and I knew I had to keep going. Despite everything, despite the betrayal, I still believed in the family we once were, and could be again. Maybe not the same, but something new, something honest. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe the divorce will come, maybe it won't. But one thing is certain, my boys will always have me. And Sarah, she deserves a chance to heal. Because beneath all the pain, beneath all the mistakes, she's still their mother, and a woman worth fighting for.